Good morning. It is Wednesday, November 20th. Got a fair amount of stuff done yesterday, but didn't have the camera with me and was kind of scrambling. I got on a plane, or got up to get on the plane yesterday morning at 3:30 in Denver, and pretty much got back to Des Moines and came straight to the farm to try to get as much done as possible, because it's fairly warm right now, but it's supposed to rain about an inch tonight, and trying to get some stuff done that works better when it's dry. So was able to get the air seeder cleaned up yesterday. Got all the seed out of that, and the seed cart part unhooked from the toolbar. So it's sitting out there in the tree line again. And did a little bit of mowing on some waterways. Have the dirt contractor working on some terraces right now, and when they get moved over to these other farms, there's some waterways that I need to have them kind of touch up at least a few spots on. So I want to get them mowed so that we can kind of see what needs attention and what's okay. Right now I'm going to check the oil in the mower, because it seemed like when I used it last night it was a little bit noisy, and we've had a little bit of problem with some shims on where the PTO shaft goes into that. And want to kind of try to make sure that it's still intact, so that we can get through the season without blowing anything up, and then hopefully maybe do a little more thorough rebuild over the winter. My other project yesterday was that I painted up the inside of a couple wagons. Go up there and take a quick peek, see how the paint actually turned out and if it's dry. So where the corn flows kind of down at the bottom of the hopper, the paint tends to wear off, and if you leave it bare metal, it'll rust, and then the corn won't slide very well next year. These will be stored inside, so it won't be a lot of rust probably, but just to kind of make sure that that doesn't cause problems. Took a little bit of paint and touched that up, which it looks like looks pretty good. Really happy with how it turned out. So just kind of in that probably 4-6 foot square section there on the bottom of the main slope, and a little bit on the inside on the vertical there also, basically where all the corn goes through that spot. It tends to wear more, but cleaned those up and shot some paint on them since it was warm yesterday and going to be fairly warm overnight. But looks like that's good, so hopefully gonna go mow a few waterways this morning, and then get these washed up with the pressure washer once it's a little bit warmer out and I'm not gonna freeze my hands when they get wet, and get those put away, get the grain head put away, so that they don't get rained on here overnight and have water trapped in stuff. The other task on today's to-do list, and partly why I was trying to get the air drill all cleaned up and stuff, is that I would like to hit some of the spots where we loaded semis, had the semi pulled in and out of the field, and where the grain cart was sitting. I'd like to hit those with a chisel plow, to kind of not break up that compaction as much as we can just in those small spots. So hopefully going to get this unhooked also. This toolbar pretty much has to be stored folded out, so it's going to be outside. But I need to move some stuff around to make a spot for it on some concrete, so that we can park it where the blades won't sink into the dirt and rust. So that also is on the to-do list. See how things go. I'm going to mow first and then probably clean up those wagons and kind of see where we're at that point. Alright, so checking out the gearbox on this mower, and this is what we found. It's going to operate if you can see. We're moving not 1/8 of an inch, but more than a 1/16 in play on that input shaft, which is most likely a problem. We are okay on oil, which is good news, because Dad used this yesterday afternoon, and I assumed that he had checked it before he started using it. So when I ran for maybe an hour or so last night, I noticed that it was making noise, but assumed that the gear oil had been checked, and noticed that there wasn't any gear oil being splashed out on the top of the deck, and thought that we should be okay. But turns out when I talked to him about it this morning, he actually hadn't checked it, and no oil came out when I pulled the plug out the side here, but it looks like there's oil in it. It's just not totally full. But looks like probably we're gonna have to do some work on this in the off season. It's a bush hog mower, but they went to Chinese gearboxes, and I guess to be fair to them, this is kind of their lower end product line. But it seems like we're going to have to go through and probably replace some bearings, or at least re-shim things to get stuff tight. And when we had problems with it earlier this summer, basically we were popping out this seal, and there's like a snap ring inside that sort of holds everything together, with some shims, and it had kind of eaten one of the really thin shims, which Dad tried to replace with something from another dealer, because bush hog parts are kind of a mess anyway, it seems like. And as soon as I turned off the camera, I also noticed we have quite a bit of side play. So probably what I'm going to do is put some extra gear oil in this and go mow for the stuff that I need to get mowed before it rains, and hope that it'll hold together at least that long, because it may need some attention sooner than later, it seems. Well, here we are mowing some waterways. We've made it the first maybe 200 yards, 250, and the mower hasn't fallen apart, and it's not blowing oil at the top, so that may mean that it all ran out the bottom between the farm and the field in the mile that I went down the road. I don't know. But we're going to try to get done kind of high priority stuff, and probably end up tearing into that tomorrow, since it's so loose, and we have quite a bit more stuff that would like to get mowed this fall, just to kind of knock down weeds along fence lines and some other waterways and stuff. So kind of the reason we're doing this is that we're getting some ditches down the middle. Kind of the last time that we did some waterway work, we had a really big rain in December, and it wasn't frozen at the time. And so a lot of the stuff that we had just worked on and reseeded sort of got washed out the center. And we came back and went over it again as early as we could the next spring, but it seems like we have kind of some lingering issues from that, with low spots where things drown out, or spots where we didn't really get a very good stand, and then ended up were kind of wet or had water going through there frequently and hard to establish a stand of grass. So I don't know exactly. There's also some spots where, like over time, generally waterway will silt in, because no matter how good your farming practices are, there's always going to be some soil lost to big rains and stuff like that. And with having the grass here, you know, as that soil suspended in the water comes down the slope, once it hits the grass, like, it hopefully slows down and that grass catches the soil, or at least some of it, but then you end up settling in the middle and end up with like a high spot. And so you kind of have to do some maintenance to push things out, which then becomes risky because you have exposed bare dirt until you get the new grass established. So I'm not sure exactly how we're going to approach, or how much of this we're going to try to rework with the cat, or just run over with some seed and see if we can get something going on, or move in some loose dirt with a skid loader or something. But that's basically, we're trying to get things trimmed up so that we can see what we've got, and then figure out a game plan to maybe work on at least a few of the big trouble spots while we have a dozer on the farm working on the terraces anyway. So I was mowing along, and I see we've got kind of a large hole, which I would think is a tile blowout, but I wouldn't expect there to be tile here because it's right in the middle of the waterway. Can't really see far enough down, other than that I can see there's water standing there, and this looks like a tile blowout, so probably that's gonna have to be fixed. Fun stuff. But that also gives me an opportunity to come back here and see a little bit warm, losing a little bit of gear oil out the front. But if it's losing gear oil, that means it's not empty, so rock and roll. So the reason that I really want to get this stuff mowed today is that since it's supposed to rain overnight, right now I can get through this without too much mud on the tires. There's some there, but by nature, waterways, since they're where all the water goes, they sort of dry up last and tend to be wet. And especially with this rig, since I don't have duals on the tractor, even though it's a pretty small tractor and doesn't really weigh a lot, you can kind of start ruts or cut ruts through the center of the waterway, and then that becomes kind of the start of the erosion in the center. So we try not to mow these unless it's really dry. And it's not really dry today, but it's a lot drier than it's going to be tomorrow. And since we're kind of getting late in the season, once it gets wet, it's not going to dry off very fast or very completely. So this is kind of the best shot to get as much done as we can. before conditions get worse and we have more likelihood of causing more damage than we're doing mowing down the weeds and stuff. Ooh, I do have a flag. So I'm gonna stick a flag by this blowout so we can get that fixed at some point. I'll probably come back with a tile probe on the four-wheeler later and see if I can figure out what's going on there, because I thought the tile should have been either up one side or the other. Maybe there maybe is some that comes up this little short waterway, so maybe that's what it is. But anyway, I'll stick a flag there so that we know there's a giant hole that we won't drop a wheel into next time we're coming down through here, and we'll have to get somebody in to get that fixed or figure out what's going on. So we're over to the other field now, and I'm gonna mow down this waterway here in just a second. I believe this is the one that has some pretty good ditches, so we'll try to get some footage of that. Over here is a little bit steeper than where I was mowing the waterway earlier. And usually where we have problems with waterways, it seems like, is where they're either really steep and the water gets a lot of velocity, I guess, and cuts down the middle, or like the one over there was pretty flat, but it drains a pretty large area, which ends up being a lot of gallons that get concentrated down to a pretty small area, and then will cut or flood out the grass and stuff. But over here, so we're going to be doing some terraces. Like I said, this is pretty steep, and this is actually not the steepest part of the field. But there's you can see the dirt here is where the tiling machine put in the main. So this is going all the way down to the creek that kind of runs through at the north end there. And we've got if you can see the orange sticking up above the dirt over here. I can get the screen back on so I can tell where I'm pointing. That's the surface intake. So basically they put the tile in and then set the intake where that surface water is going to drain, and then where these pink or orangish flags are is going to be where the terrace runs. So the water, instead of cutting down the hill and having, you know, a quarter of a mile to build up velocity and pick up soil particles and cause problems, basically we're going to have a dam here that stops that water and gives it a place to pool, and then drains out that surface intake, so that we have a lot less erosion. Eventually we're going to do some more farther down the hill, but the budget for this year didn't allow to do everything we wanted to do, so we kind of had to divide and conquer a little bit on prioritizing what was going to do the most good. But we've got the tile line in at least, so when we come back, in future years to do some more of this project, we'll have the expensive part there, and we'll just have to put in more intakes and then do the dirt work to build the terraces. So would like to eventually do a few more on this one, and then the next draw over also, which hopefully will have capacity at the end of that main where we can hook onto it as well. But there are definitely limitations of where waterways work and work well. And this is a farm that kind of is one of them. All right, so this is one of the spots that we're hopefully going to have fixed, because there's probably, what is that, 18 inches, couple feet drop off between where the waterway should be and where the water has cut down to. So probably we'll kind of try to push this out and get it leveled out, and then seed it back in with a flat bottom to hopefully hold next time. This has kind of been like this for a while. The last time that we did some maintenance on this farm was in 2015, I believe, and I didn't know that this spot was here, so it didn't get fixed then, and it hasn't really gotten too much worse, but we'd definitely like to get that corrected. So this is the kind of stuff that we're trying to stop with some of these conservation improvements. So basically, all the ground that you can see, the water drains down through this area, and we're getting spots where it's cutting through into the ditch. And even though we've sort of like pulled back where we farm to be farther away from the ditch, it still cuts back every year. So we're gonna kind of readjust some stuff. So right now the waterways kind of come down and just dump onto the bottom here. And maybe in the past, when the rains were smaller in size and less frequent in large size at least, you could get away with having that water come across the bottom and then just run over the edge. But it seems like at this point it's finding spots to cut as opposed to just spreading out. And so we're going to extend this waterway down, try to cut off some of that water at the top of the hills, and hopefully add some more terraces up that waterway on the right there that you can see kind of between the area that's been drilled with rye. You know, try to slow down that water. Part of the problem over here also is that we have a lot of surface water coming off of our neighbor. There's terraces there, but you might be able to see there's trees growing in them, and there's holes through the terraces, so they're not really doing anything or much to help, at least silted in, so there's no real storage capacity there. So that's kind of adding to the problem, because we have some of our water and some of our neighbors' water, and the way that Iowa drainage law works, basically anything uphill like can do whatever they want with their water onto you. And then doing some more stuff over here also. If you can see the orange intake there, that's going to end up being kind of like a floor drain type of a thing, where the dozer man is going to sort of shape that up so that we kind of have a little bit of a terrace there, and hopefully you can kind of route some of this water over to that intake and then get it flushed down underground, as opposed to washing across the top and taking a bunch of dirt with it. This is kind of one of the more exciting things of my day, is mowing along this ditch, because it's pretty deep and steep, and there's holes because we periodically will get different creatures. Mostly beavers are the real problematic ones, because they'll dam up the water and then also like dig back into the banks for their homes, and then those will eventually cave in and have a big hole. We're a ways away from the bank right now, so this isn't too bad, and I can comfortably hold the camera as I'm talking, but definitely some pucker factor as we get another pass or two in here and get closer. You can kind of see there's some of this that's looking pretty lumpy, and there's definitely times that we're one big hole away from turning this baby upside down in the water, which we definitely do not want to do. So we're all the way down the first gear because I was not feeling good about going through some of this stuff, and there's a hole. So it's a good thing that I was going slow. So you can see this is a ways down, I would guess maybe 15 feet or so. There's water in the bottom, and the sides are super steep, and we don't want to put the tractor down there. So we might be about done in this spot, or I can maybe kind of pull out here and then just back over and kind of mow down some of this, hanging the mower back without putting myself and the tractor at risk. But that's kind of the adventures of mowing along a creek like this. Went along and found a hole that I suspect maybe is a former beaver home. As you can probably see, it's 3 or 4 feet wide, a couple feet deep after the top caved in, and there's a hole that goes all the way through the ditch, or the bank, to the creek. Get the camera down where you can see the light. So it's about 3 o'clock in the afternoon now, and we're getting ready to take the Hiniker toolbar over to park it. Got the wagons cleaned up, that we're sitting there, and as soon as I get back from unhooking this, probably I'm going to pull the snouts off of the ends on the grain head there, so we can get it pulled over and put in the shed. We got the wagons hooked together, so as soon as the tractor gets back that we need to use to get them put into the shed, we'll do that. They're going to a different farm, and the door on the shed there is too short to get the big tractors through. Not looking exceedingly likely that I'm going to get any chisel plowing done today, but we're making progress. All right, we are loose from the tractor. And I forgot to bring over a hammer, so I ended up beating out the lower pins. We go through those lift arms with the hitch pin that happened to be in the cab, but got everything loose. Unhooked our hydraulic hoses, which I should close up the dust covers on, and ready to pull away. So this will hang out here for the winter, and next summer I guess probably, because I don't think that I'm probably going to use it to do any beans since those outside wings don't flex down. I was going to try to adjust these so that the ends of the tubes are kind of hanging downward and hopefully don't collect water, because some of them definitely had a little bit of water in them when I hooked stuff up here this year. But Went down the line with a putty knife and kind of scraped off the opener discs as well as the closing wheels, just to kind of get the dirt off of those so that it doesn't collect or attract moisture and rust too badly. So you can see the chunks of dirt on the concrete there. Pull away. So I'm just gonna go put those pins back in those spots for the lower links. I guess if I'd been thinking instead of talking for the camera, I could have just let the 3-point down lower and put them in with the tractor parked there. But anyway, that's it for now. As I predicted, I ran out of time to do any chisel plow, but got everything else that was on the to-do list, I think, done. Got the shed latched up. I think I got everything picked up at the other shed already at the shop. Got the power washer put away and stuff from when I cleaned up wagons. So I think that's it for today. See what happens tomorrow, how much it rains.